This is WGBB AM 1240 and W240DF FM 95.9 Freeport, New York.
It is time for StreetWise with former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association StreetWise production, host of StreetWise, Mr. Lou Telano.
Good evening and welcome back to StreetWise. Hey, my guest this evening is a renowned psychiatrist, medical doctor, best-selling author. Now, you've seen as a guest and contributor on many of the shows, including Court TV, Larry King, Oprah, Fox, CNN, Entertainment Tonight, and many others. She finally made it to the big time on my show. So, and by the way, she also has a weekly show herself. When I'm saying her, you know, I'm referring to Pretty Young Lady because I only seem to have conversations with Pretty Young Lady. It's my pleasure to welcome to StreetWise Dr. Carole Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman, welcome to StreetWise.
Thank you so much.
No, I should say welcome back because you're.
That's right.
Yeah, you were here several months ago, and but I think we spoke the other day, and we're going to sort of change the format as a result of what's going on in Afghanistan and with the best president that we ever had in American history, Joe Biden.
At least in his own mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What is your opinion? And it's highly regarded and respected of the psychological effect throughout the country with what's happening in Afghanistan while we're talking right now.
Well, you know, it really boggles my mind as to how anybody in America could be just going about their business as if this were a normal day. When we have Americans stranded in Afghanistan being attacked. I mean, you know, we're not hearing of this, of course, from the mainstream media, all the details, but some people have been doing selfies and all, you know, recording themselves and so on. I mean, there is no question that the Taliban has already been attacking Americans amongst and Afghans and everybody else who's in the way. So how is it that we are just, you know, pretending or that, oh, well, that's over there and that's very sad. And yes, our servicemen are really feeling sad because they feel as though they've sacrificed so much for so little, you know, that now the Taliban is saying they won the war on terror. But why, you know, do you have a thought for why it is? And at this point, everybody knows you don't have to be, I mean, I was talking about this from before the election. Warning people about how Biden has encroaching dementia, and his dementia has gotten worse and worse and worse since then. So why is it that we are still letting him sit in the seat of the president and continue to make a mess of Afghanistan, which will cost incredible lives? Not only will these Americans be stranded, but then they'll be hostages. Then Afghanistan is going to be asking us for all kinds of things. I mean, the security of our country is so at stake, and people are just going about their business, you know, you know, even in the newspapers, like online, you know, talking about, and other media too, talking about things like Britney Spears and, you know, all these ridiculous, I don't mean that, you know, I mean, all of these things that are so much less important in any case than what's going on in Afghanistan.
And what's less important of the repetition of get the vaccine,
Yes.
Wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask.
Yes.
That's much more of a priority, and that seems to be his priority because I think that's all he can remember. As rehearsed. And a great point, Dr. Lieberman, because when he opened up his address to the country yesterday, that was secondary. Oh, by the way, yes, the question on Afghanistan, that was the least important thing, like you just said a moment ago, in his regard to what's going on. But you know, I think the concern is is because his actions and what he's doing obviously has making us appear weaker, and it's making the Taliban, ISIS, and all Al Qaeda over there stronger. Are you concerned, like I am, that we are at the, I would say, the most vulnerable time to be attacked since 9/11?
Absolutely. We are more vulnerable today than at 9/11. I have been since 9/11, or when 9/11 happened, because I'm a born and bred New Yorker, even though by then I was already living in California. That wounded my heart. 9/11, the attack on New York, and of course the Pentagon and the plane that ended up in Pennsylvania. I decided on that day that I was going to devote a significant part of my career to helping people cope with terrorism, help the memories of 9/11 and the ongoing threat of terrorism. And I have been doing just that since then. Like, I have been working on this for 20 years, trying to get people to wake up and to realize that, yes, there are going to be more 9/11s, not maybe in the exact same way, but terrorists have been wanting to take over the West, especially America, for over 1,000 years. They were not going to stop at any particular time. And especially with COVID, Americans have just been, and because there haven't been any significant attacks since COVID, because we haven't been out in the streets. So it's been harder to attack us. But there have been some attacks in Europe, of course, and in Africa, and all over the world. So I've written 2 books on terrorism. I do a podcast called The Terrorist Therapist Show, where I talk about the hottest topic in terror of the week. And I've done speaking engagements and of course the media, talking on television and radio, and trying to get people to realize that they need to build resilience in themselves. And this has been for the last 20 years that I have been trying to explain this to people, because the terrorists are not done. And now we are more vulnerable than ever, because we have a president who can't put 2 thoughts together in order to figure out how to get out of Afghanistan. And of course, the question is, should we have really gotten out anyway? But putting that aside, I know that Trump had made an arrangement and all of that, but if Trump saw what was started to happen, when at whatever date he picked or was going to pick, if he would have gotten the slightest inkling, and there were people in intelligence and in military who were telling Biden that this is a bad idea, this is starting to go badly, Trump wouldn't have continued to do that. And he would have brought in more troops by this point, of course, to save all the Americans. So, but part of the problem is that Biden, seriously, I do this as a forensic psychiatrist. I work on all kinds of criminal and civil cases, and a number of cases have to do with determining somebody's competency. So like with wills or with signing some kind of a contract, are they competent to do this? So I know how to judge, whether someone is competent. Not that at this point you need a psychiatrist to make this judgment. Anybody can see that he's not competent. So we have a president who can't put 2 thoughts together. You need to have abstract thinking to be able to figure out how to get out of Afghanistan, or whether we should have pursued getting out at that time to begin with. And he can't do abstract thinking with dementia. You can't do abstract thinking, meaning you can't see the whole picture. You can't figure out what to do because you don't know what's the next step. It's like chess. You can't play a game of chess because you don't know, you can't visualize what the next step is going to be, that they're going to make. And that you then should make. So that's the biggest reason why we are in deep trouble. And I'll let you, I'm talking so much, I'll just let you comment from there.
Yeah, well, you really don't have to be able to pretty much figure out what he should have. The basic thing, which anyone that's a manager, administrator, or a leader, you surround yourself with competent people that you can trust. And in Biden's case, he had the military advising him on the proper way, I think, because I'm not too happy with the military leaders that he has in this administration. It's another story, but he should have listened to them. Like you said, he cannot make decisions, and yet he did make this decision. Now, folks, I'm familiar with Dr. Lieberman. She's, again, a forensic psychiatrist, psychologist, and it's a great point. You don't have to be psychiatrist, psychologist, of a mind reader to see how the heck he handled this. He just handled it backwards. It's just very simple. Scout leader could tell you this was handled backwards. 2,500 troops was doing a great job there, which Dr. Lieberman. Actually, I think the country wouldn't even wouldn't bother them if he left 2,500 troops there in order to keep us safe from another 9/11. But now the point is, what do people have to do? Because people are concerned big time, worse than ever in the last 20 years. I mean, your suggestion, in other words, how not to go bananas, because I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of them say, Lou, as the former chief of police and detective, they sort of try to get my opinion. And my opinion is what I said a moment ago, is that I think we are at our most vulnerable point in the last 20 years. So what would be your advice to the average person who has a tremendous concern, Dr. Lieberman?
Well, that's, I'm glad you brought up about the police, because this is another reason why we're at our most vulnerable, because, with all this defund the police,
Yes.
and police have, in lots of different places, police have lost their funding,
Yeah.
at least to some degree, in so many different places. And it was so short-sighted. I mean, this was part of the denial that terrorists are still out to get us. We don't need police, and in some place, I can't remember, I think it was Chicago, that they are sending social workers instead of police. I mean, there's going to be a lot of dead social workers wherever this was. I'm not to say that in some situations it wouldn't be a good idea to send a social worker with police, like in domestic violence and so on, but not instead. And so that's part of the problem. And even those police who didn't get defunded, the morale, as I'm sure you can speak to, is lower than ever before, with people attacking the police just willy-nilly in broad daylight. No, in the middle of Manhattan, for example. People are this is, I know there's been lots of talk, probably we talked about that the last time I was on, about how with COVID people are being pushed to the brink and so on. But now with Afghanistan, it's really, there aren't enough hospitals to keep people in who need it, because I mean, besides anxiety and depression and PTSD and substance abuse and suicidal ideation and all of those kinds of things, which, by the way, started to increase after 9/11 and has continued. Of course, now COVID has made it even worse. But after 9/11, the difference is that after 9/11, we weren't killing each other in the streets in the same way that we are doing after COVID, and really after the Black Lives Matter protests, which is really what kicked it all off. But so at least after 9/11, we were more united and we were supportive of each other. We don't have that now. Now everybody, you're on your own. I mean, these pictures, I look at the New York Post every morning, and I look at other things too, but I think I usually start with the Post. I go to the Daily Mail, and I go to Breitbart, and then I look at some other things just to see what other people are saying. But when in the Post in particular, I mean, of course, they've changed it now. I don't like the new format at all, but still, they have all these pictures of what's going on in the streets of Manhattan in broad daylight. And it's just, I mean, it's not a good way to start your morning. I start looking at these things for things to talk that are going to get me angry so that I could tweet about. But it's just, people have we've become so primitive. We've gone back to our primitive, caveman days, because of perhaps being in the cave in COVID. But we are so violent now, more than ever. And so the idea of terror attacks now, there's not the support of each other and the protection of each other that there used to be.
That's a great point with these. We're going back to the caveman pretty much mentality or days. And you have, which I didn't know. And in fact, I was surprised when Biden, I think during his last speech, mentioned that he had dialogue or conversation with the Taliban and had an agreement. It's just unimaginable. It's just we are dealing with cave dweller rock throwers. And now these cave dweller rock throwers have all of our military sophistication.
Yes, yes, that's another reason why. Absolutely. But you saw the press conference of the Taliban, I would assume, did you?
Yes.
When you compare Biden to the Taliban, they didn't have to read off teleprompters. They were talking spontaneously, and they answered questions from the press. Unlike Biden, who was squinting to try to read the teleprompter, that keeps getting worse and worse, and then he fills in words that don't make any sense. And he wouldn't take any questions, in his first press conference about Afghanistan. He wouldn't take any, and even subsequently, he likes to leave the stage when he knows it's going to get hot. So the Taliban really have done a great job at PR. And there are people already leaving various countries to go to Afghanistan because they made it seem like such an inviting place, And of course they're lying. Of course we can't trust them, just like we can't trust Iran. And yet, do you know when it's really bad now? But when August 31st comes around, which is just around the corner, and he's and it turns out that Americans are left, and it turns out that we hear something about the damage, the people who were killed and injured and so on. And this is right before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. There is nothing worse for the morale of this country. And there's nothing worse for this country, because it's telling the whole world we have surrendered. They did that picture, that pose, like Americans at Iwo Jima. They're not quite as dumb. They live in caves, but they're not quite as dumb as we have. Many of us have, like probably Biden, have thought that they are. They have been outsmarting us. And when we are gone, except for the hostages, when we are gone, that is going to be the saddest day for America, because the whole world is going to realize we are not the #1 superpower now. It's the Taliban. And when they raise their flag over the embassy, and they've already been, of course, raising their flags all over the place, like the picture with the pose of Iwo Jima. That is just crushing. And it's especially crushing for the families of the people who died there, and for the soldiers, the troops who have sacrificed physically and sacrificed psychologically for going there. And when you think about 9/11, the people who joined the military, it was, oh yes, I'm gonna people who never thought they would join the military, but I'm gonna protect America. Now look, the Taliban has won.
It's very sad, folks. Dr. Carole Lieberman, I'm sorry, is talking about the Taliban imitating our successful mission of taking over Iwo Jima during World War II, which was a big plus for us, but pretty much indicated that the war was pretty much over in regard to our interaction with Japan. But they're right. For people that are tribal, they were sophisticated enough to duplicate that. That's a message. If we can't see that message, then I'll tell you, I think a blind person could see that message.
Yes.
But
yes, that they're claiming the end to the war and that they won.
Now, morale. uh,
No.
the morale that it's pretty much is turning into a psychological effect. Dr. Lieberman, am I correct? These children that were born and raised during the past 20 years, aside from wearing a mask, and now they see their parents, their grandparents are concerned about an imminent, I shouldn't say imminent, but a possible attack the 20th anniversary of 9/11. What is a parent or grandparent tell these young kids? It's mind-boggling. But how do we handle that, Dr. Carole Lieberman?
Well, funny you should ask, because the answer is in my book. This was the most recent book that I've written about terrorism. It's the only book for kids, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, oh my, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And the first half of it is for grownups, parents and teachers and so on. And then the second half is a picture book for kids about terrorism. So for example, we have here Osama bin Laden. I talk about him. I talk about, well, these are the terrorists. I talk about, I wanted to, like, what is a terrorist? A terrorist is like a big bully on the playground. And so on. So it gives answers, how parents can answer kids' most frequently asked questions. Here's a picture. What is a terrorist? A terrorist is like a big bully on a playground. So the first thing is parents have to tell themselves that they need to talk about these things, because they can't, a lot of times parents tell themselves, well, why should I worry my kids? They don't need to know this stuff. It's going to blow over. I don't want to scare them. I don't know how to talk to them about it. And they are making a big mistake, because kids, even if they're not sitting down and watching the whole news story, they certainly are walking through the living room and seeing some of these things, and they're coming to their own conclusions. Now that school has started again, kids are talking amongst each other. So of course they know about, they don't understand all of it, but they know about it. And we can't just pretend that this isn't happening. Of course, you have to decide, depending upon how old your child is and how psychologically mature, you tell it one way or another way. You tell more details, of course, to a child who's older, and less details to a child who's younger or who can't, where it would, maybe if a child who already has other problems, you don't want to add to it. Right. But for most children, you need to explain something. Even children who have problems see television and they need to know what's going on. So we and with the 20th anniversary, we would have had to explain 9/11 to them anyway. So we have to explain, the best thing is one sort of gentle way of talking about it. I mean, of course, the bully on the playground, that's a way for even really young kids to understand a terrorist. But also getting a little more sophisticated, for children who can appreciate that. Parents can talk about how terrorists are people who have problems within themselves, and who have the leaders of whom, or who have been persuaded to join these groups by leaders who have misinterpreted purposely certain passages of the Quran to get people to say that they should all fight against America, against the West. And it really is, I mean, like I mentioned about my radio show, the Terrorist Therapist Show, I've done a lot of things about individual terrorists when there were sort of major terror attacks, or not even so major, but just looking into their background, like what kind of childhood they had, and how many of them were in prison, and so on. And so you can talk about these kinds of things that made them angry. Of course, poverty, of course, looking at things that the West has, it's the whole 9 yards, but it's really being angry as that gets them to agree to, or makes the things that the Taliban, or like ISIS and Al Qaeda, all of them have to say attractive, because they are angry. They want to fight against the West. So somebody who is angry within themselves, they give them a target, and it is easy to recruit them. And of course, during COVID, where more and more people were spending more time on the internet, they have had a boom in recruiting, even before the Taliban press conference that, made them all look like teddy bears.
By the way, folks, I'm just going to repeat the latest book from Dr. Carole Lieberman, Coping with Terrorism and Dreams Interrupted. Is that it?
That was the one that I wrote. That was the 1-year anniversary of London's 9/11, their 7/7, which happened in 2005. And my book came out on the anniversary on 2006. And I went to London, of course, and did all kinds of speaking and media and everything, and trying to help people cope with their first anniversary of their 9/11. But my most recent one is the one that I showed you, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists.
Right.
Oh my, how to protect your child in a time of terror.
Obviously, mention that, folks, because we don't have the answers. The average person doesn't have an answer. So if you can, just guide through a book like Dr. Carole Lieberman's book, you'll get some thoughts, some ideas, and how to cope with what's going on. And the important thing, I feel, obviously, with the young kids out there, they are raised through this COVID-19. Now they're growing up through this threat from
Yes.
Taliban,
Yes.
ISIS, whatever, and the other part of the world, which they haven't thought about. They actually haven't thought about Dr. Carole Lieberman until now. It's not a thought in their mind. So now where they're getting this immediate concern. And so what do parents, not to be repetitious, but what do parents do? Because it's new to a lot of these kids, because they were just trying to get over, should the young kids take the vaccine? Should they not take the vaccine? And now these young kids, many of them, they're not, I would think, not mentally strong enough to cope with this. I would call it added pressure to life in itself, Dr. Lieberman.
Well, there are a lot of things that parents can do to help them build resilience. And I give parents and teachers 88 things that they can do with the kids. From the basic thing is to get kids to express their feelings. That's the most basic thing. Because when they hold their feelings in and they don't express them, and I talk about 4 main types of reactions that parents should look for, which is scared, sad, mad, and bad. Scared, sad, mad. Those are self-explanatory. Bad, it's not that they're bad, it's that they're feeling like a mixture of feelings. So it's just a mishmash, and that's just feeling bad.
It's enough that they're confused in what's going on in the world with the what's going on in our educational system. The new curriculum. It's not reading, writing, math, or whatever. It's about race, and so it's so confusing for young people today. I mean, it was obvious when I was a kid. We knew what was good, what was bad. If you did something bad, you're going to get punished. You're going to get punished either by your family or the police. But there was, you had to pass a reading, writing, and arithmetic in school. I don't know. Now, do you think there's too much what's going on in the world, these political different things that we're going through? Do you think it's too much for young people to be to listen to or to see or to be part of it? Tough time, I think. I'm no kid, so I don't think I've seen it this bad for young people in all the years I'm around.
Yes. Afghanistan came out of the blue, as you were saying. Critical race theory is so damaging. Yes. Only to be, I don't know which is worse, critical race theory or the twisted information that they're giving kids about sex. I mean, just those two things together, forget about Afghanistan or 9/11. I mean, this is like, it would be like a sick experiment done by an evil, an evil psychiatrist who wanted to see, not that there are evil psychiatrists in the world, but if there were, who wanted to see how much can we put on kids before they go crazy, or not even just kids, on grownups. It's happening to grownups too. This is just too much. Critical race theory is fostering racism. Yes. I mean, it used to be that, when kids are little, they don't really see people as different races. They just see people as people. And if they're nice, if they like the person, they have fun, if they're a good friend, then they like the person, whatever color they are. And nowadays, it's all about the white kids are taught that you're really bad because you have white privilege, and you shouldn't hate the blacks. I didn't hate the blacks. I mean, and then the black kids are taught, oh, you should hate the whites because they have white privilege and they take advantage of you. You have a bad life because of the white people. I mean, and then of course the sex talk, in schools and it's not just public schools, it's private schools too, where parents are paying, $40,000, $50,000 a semester or a year, and they're being taught that you should not go according to the genitals that you were born with. Just because you have boy genitals, you should not necessarily be a boy. In fact, it's cooler to be a girl if you have boy genitals, and vice versa. I mean that, and they're teaching kids to masturbate. You do not have to teach a child to masturbate. They figure that one out on themselves, on their own, as Freud discovered over 100 years ago, and we all discovered. Humans discovered before that. So it's just sick. But the tragic part is, the tragic part is that these people have gotten into the schools, the school boards, as teachers and as principals. They have been infiltrating for years. And now that more people are waking up to what kids are learning in school, it's kind of late. I'm not saying it's too late, because it can't be too late. We have to do something to get this kind of stuff out of schools. But it's harder to overturn it when they are so embedded. The people who believe in this stuff are so embedded in the schools.
Well, what's your thoughts on that? It seems like there's an agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's all the same agenda. It's the same agenda that is why Biden has the borders open, the southern borders open. It's the same agenda why they pulled out of Afghanistan and don't care, and are bringing Afghans whose records, whose credentials, whatever, they don't check. So surely it doesn't take a brilliant terrorist, to figure out that if they hide amongst the good Afghans, that they'll come to America and they can wreak havoc. They are destroying America so that they can bring in the kind of rule that they want, socialism, communism, they want to destroy America. Now you kind of have to scratch your head and say, why would Americans, and Obama is behind, the main guy behind all of this. Biden can't think, and so Obama's pulling his strings, and Kamala is out to lunch. When this whole thing happened in Afghanistan, Biden was hiding in Camp David and watching television, watching the world go by on television. His Jen was on vacation. They had to have planned this. They had to have planned this. There is no way that he was there watching television. She was on vacation. Obama was still partying. I don't know where Obama was. And all of this went down. And he didn't come back to the White House for days. Really, it doesn't take a brilliant person to figure this out. This is all part of an agenda to destroy America.
Oh boy. Okay, we're going to take a break now, folks. Don't go away. We haven't got to the meat of what we're talking about, although it seems that way. I'll be back in a few seconds with Dr. Carole Lieberman. Hang in there, folks. Okay, we're back. Back with renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. I tell you, she's an expert on so many different things. We had a different agenda to talk about, but somehow she's able to tie everything in, which is everything that's really needed. We talked about. But I have to ask you this: what's your thoughts on? For some reason, I've seen it as a young kid, how a bully, and you mentioned that bullies really dislike themselves, but yet they become leaders. How, is the what would be, I would think, is the explanation? I know, and bullies are cowards. I found out all my life, right?
Uh-huh.
But yet they become leaders. When I say leaders, leaders of not a great, you mentioned before, agenda, something like, I don't want to go to the extreme and like say Adolf Hitler, but we got illiterate, and maybe they're not illiterate. You got Taliban, which we spoke to, which you mentioned a minute ago, having a conversation with the president of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and it seemed like this nobody, this zero, this bully is dictating what we should do in Afghanistan. What's the connection between bullies and them who are cowards somehow become leaders?
Well, of course, not all bullies become leaders, but yes, some do. And it has to do with whether they can gather behind them enough people who believe in their agenda. And then, they support the bully no matter how ridiculous the bully becomes. That's what we're seeing now. And it's just really sad. But it isn't so much, it isn't just the Taliban, but yes, when the world sees the Taliban bossing the president of the United States around, we've lost our status as America first, or as America being the number one country who was going to take care of everybody else. I mean, why would any other country like Taiwan or just any other country that was having a foreign country invade them, for example, why would they look to the United States to protect them when we're running out of Afghanistan with our tails between our legs? It is so humiliating. And so I mean, this country was not born on those kinds of. We didn't run out of England with our tails between our legs. We ran out to fight, to have a democracy, a republic, to have freedom, and this is not. Our forefathers are turning over in their graves.
Well, I mentioned leadership before for another reason, besides with bullies. I'm trying to
get rid of that.
I'm relating that to Joe Biden, where he's actually following instructions from a bully of the world, the Taliban, and yet the leadership is, for an example, we all know the decision by Joe Biden was backwards as far as leaving Afghanistan. And I saw, just me alone and many others, was no reason to leave, even though we wanted to get out of there. We all know that. But we were able to protect the country with 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. And now we can't. We lost that. We've lost that. And I don't know how we're going to gain that back. It's just we have triple the amount of troops there now than we had that was able to control.
Well, of course, at the time, when we had 2,500 troops, we also had an Afghan army that at least was pretending, that they were going to fight for their country, and did to some degree. But now, that was, of course, very disappointing. But really what we should be, in my opinion, and I know a lot of people will disagree, but I believe, and it's not like I'm a warmonger, but I think that we should bring in a whole onslaught of troops, not just, a few thousand more here and there, but really take back however many it takes to take back the country and reestablish our presence there, and not, I mean, we could still take it back, really, if there were enough military, and I mean, and I think we should do that before we leave, instead of leaving.
I agree, and many of people do agree with that. Is because we're dealing with a different type of mentality, and we know that. And this again, I mentioned discipline before, and it seems like the only language they understand is force. And this is why Donald Trump was able to pretty much control all these people, and and make more friends than enemies. They disliked him, but they respected him.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
We don't have that now. Do you think, for political reasons, that the 25th Amendment, folks, which is, is to force the president to leave for a slew of reasons, you think because the certain Democrats are concerned about their own preservation, because of what's going on, to protect themselves from their office, whether they're congressmen, U.S. senators, or even at the local level? Do you think they may see what's going on, or they may have no choice but to pursue that, Dr. Carole Lieberman?
Well, I've been saying, I mean, he certainly meets the criteria,
Yes.
Of being unfit for office. And yes, they should. I mean, but I don't know why there hasn't been. I mean, really, are we that? Are they that? I had higher hopes, quite frankly, that some congressmen would have, well, they're saying the obvious, but would have done what's obviously necessary in calling for the 25th Amendment. If we have terror attacks, terrorists don't ask people who they attack or a place where they attack, are there Democrats here or are there Republicans here? They just attack. So, these people who are not calling for the 25th Amendment, I mean, they are in danger too. It's not just us peons. They also are in danger. I mean, I don't know. Are they thinking they're going to live for the next year or indefinitely under the White House or under Congress, under the in the tunnels underneath? I mean, they are at risk too.
And they don't want to lose their positions as well. That's their priority, their political reasons why, and they're in jeopardy now.
That's why I don't understand why. I mean, there's too much apathy, fear, apathy, denial in Americans for not, their phones should be ringing off the hook with Americans saying, I'm not going to vote for you if you don't do something. Call for the 25th Amendment, call for troops to be sent back in, all of these kinds of things. More people have to do this so that these people in power realize, they're realizing that this was not a smart idea. We should do something.
Well, maybe they are, but certain medias won't let us know that.
Well, true.
But that may change, because you said if it affects them personally, themselves, their focus and agenda of supporting their party, which I have to say is the Democratic Party, no matter what happens. I think some of them are starting to change their thought on it, because they have no choice. They really have no, I'm talking about the, as Trump would call them, Donald Trump, fake news. So fake news is going to start.
Yes, they have been. Yes, they have been. I mean, you have to. It's like right in our face how cognitively impaired Biden is. But this morning I got this thought that, and tweeted about it, of course, that there could be that one of the reasons why they are not as upset about what's happening in Afghanistan. I mean, you have to literally be heartless to not be upset about what's happening in Afghanistan in terms of the Americans being stranded there. But it also is keeping our attention on Afghanistan while certain people like Nancy Pelosi and friends are getting bills passed in Congress, and we're not really paying attention to it. The media is all on Afghanistan, right? And meanwhile, she's getting through or making progress in any case on the budget bill, the ridiculous trillions of dollars budget bill. And immigration and the election fraud. They're trying to get through these bills to have the federal government be in charge of elections so that they can keep making future elections cheat on future elections. I mean, all of these things are happening and we're just paying attention to Afghanistan. So, there might be some, what's that expression? Something behind their madness, some reason in any case behind all this craziness.
Not to put in madness.
Method to their madness. Yes, there we go.
Well, I don't know. They say when we hit bottom, then we're going to start going up. We're close to bottom. I do have to ask you this because you touched on it. Many of us did on the analyzing our President Joe Biden. Many of us feel there's obvious, I say many of us feel there's senility there, but yet he's able to hold, I watched this, he was able to hold a straight conversation, which could be deceiving. Of course, he was able to read the teleprompter with only making a couple of mistakes. So people say, you see, he's very clear. I heard people say it's not.
Well,
then it obviously mentioned, and then he can't answer questions. He just walks away. So,
well, yeah, he walks away before you can actually see that he lost the plot. He really doesn't know what's going on. He'll come out with a thing here and there, but there are lots of signs. For example, when he gets irritated, he's easily irritated and he yells at the person, the press or some people in the audience. He was doing that during the election. He was yelling at people in the audience who asked him hard questions. And so he's continuing to do that. His in that press conference I was referring to, the first one about Afghanistan, and he was reading the teleprompter, but he was having to squint so much, and he was not showing any emotion. There was, because he was concentrating on reading the teleprompter, but he also, it really looked like he really didn't have any emotion. And even though he's talking about these horrendous, frightening things, and it made me think of in 1984, Big Brother, where there's this big screen and Big Brother is just talking, but droning on. I mean, it really doesn't seem like Biden cares at all about the Americans who are going to be left. Part of that is a sign of dementia, not showing emotion, but part of it is I really think that he's revealing his true self.
wow. Not showing emotion, like if you're familiar with serial killers,
Yeah.
he's a serial killer. He may be a serial
Well, yes, he is actually. This is making him a serial killer.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a great point. Yes, I guess we could call him that now, a serial killer. I'm so concerned what's going to happen because it's obvious Americans and allies are going to be left behind. I think you're judging him from a different point of view that the average person does. Do you think he's going to change his deadline that he has for August 31st because of the pressure or whatever? I just wanted to get your thoughts and your opinion on that, Dr. Carole Lieberman.
Well, I mean, the Taliban have warned him that if that the 31st is the deadline, if he ignores that, I mean, a lot of Americans will be killed. If he doesn't ignore it, a lot of Americans will be killed. I don't know that there's, of course, if someone were smart, if the president were smart, and had, you know, had their faculties and had strength behind him, he might wait until the 31st, do his best to get as many Americans out as possible. And then if there was some reaction by the Taliban, use that, like really have a ton of soldiers ready, at the ready, to swoop in on the 31st and to use the Taliban's action, whatever they do, you know, they kill 1 or 2 or 10, however, whatever they do on the 31st, if they, or the first, if we're not out completely, then that would be the prompt, the reason that we would have to go in with military, and to go in faster than before the Taliban could know what's happening to them. That would be, I mean, I'm no military genius by any means, but that's one plan that one could do. Do I think he would do that? No.
Yeah, that would be immediate retaliation is what has to be done if that happens. And I have a feeling it has to happen, and it's happening already. People are being murdered now, which we know, and it's being downplayed somehow. I mean, I get a kick when the Biden's press person, we have contact with these people who are, and she didn't like the word stranded, of course, which we all saw. Maybe abandoned would be the better term. They're going to text. They're hiding. They're going to email. They're going to make phone calls if they want. Whichever American wants to leave, whichever American wants to, we're going to give them a choice if they want to leave or not. It is so ridiculous. It's just I don't know. It's pathetic. You know, just
It is. It is.
think,
And
you know, well, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, well, no, that's yes. I mean, that's true. You look at these things and you think, did they just say that? Did she just say that? Did he just say that? I mean, it's so, and you know, it's not only bad for our country and our security and all that, but I was mentioning earlier about morale. That sense of almost like an abused child, you know, where hiding, like you know, abused children go into that pose where they like protect themselves, and that is what America is, and each American is going to be feeling like, even if they don't acknowledge it to themselves or verbally or whatever. That's what it's like. This is, you know, we never left Americans behind in any country. This is just unheard of. And
besides being unheard of, the Brits, obviously the British, the French, the Dutch, and the Germans, 1, 2, 3, they got their people out, Carole Lieberman. And it's just amazing. We're supposed to be the strongest country in the world. Obviously, we are. Yet they were able to jump in there and get their people out, and yet we can't. It's just we're in such a terrible, sad situation. So I hope is well, either way, it's not gonna be a great conclusion, no matter what. So
it's going to be so traumatic on the 31st and the 1st. I mean, it's already traumatic, but it's going to be building up to that. And then, you know, and then 11 days later is 9/11. So, I mean, because we have already been, before this happened with Afghanistan, we've already been somewhat aware. Most people, most Americans have been already, it's been like creeping into our consciousness that that the 20th anniversary of 9/11 was coming. And, you know, we've had a little bit of dread and a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of PTSD, you know, triggering memories of what happened on 9/11 and so on. And so we were already in this kind of a state. And then when Afghanistan happened, just started to happen, I mean, we're in the middle of it, that just pushed everything up into a much more traumatic, kind of depressing kind of state of mind, where you know, a lot of us try to deny it. I mean, it's deny that that since 9/11, as I was saying earlier, that that this could happen again, that terrorists are still out to get us and so on. You know, of course, in Europe, they haven't forgotten that terrorists are still out to get the West, because they've been having more continuous attacks. Well, I mean, I mentioned England, their 9/11 being 7/7. I mean, it was pretty devastating. Of course, not 3,000 people died, but it was a comparable kind of thing for their population. And there have been other attacks in London. There have been other attacks in France, especially, and Notre Dame, and which I believe was a terror attack, even though, that was kind of whitewashed. And so it's just, we have, I was starting to say, we need to do things like, we have to get our psyche and our body reinforced, more resilient. And I know that's easier said than done, especially about our psyche, but we have to go to therapy. If this is getting too much, especially if we're having suicidal ideas, it's easy to get therapy these days through Zoom and all that. And physically, we need to check out what, a lot of people have let things in their body sort of go because we don't want to go to hospitals or doctors during COVID. So, but we have to strengthen ourselves from everything from vitamins to exercise to, laughter, including at least an hour of laughter in our day, things that can help build our immune system, help build our body and our minds, meditation, calming music, these kinds of things. Because we're going to have to be we are already going through a lot, and it's going to be getting worse between now and 9/11 and after.
I was going to say, what about my little cognac added to that? Okay, we actually believe we ran out of time, folks. Dr. Carole Lieberman, we got to get her book, Coping with Terrorism, because it's especially now kids.
Well, the more current and urgent one is The Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, which they can get from they can get an autographed copy from my website, which is terroristtherapist.com.
Terrorist therapy?
No, terroristtherapist.com. Therapist. Like I'm the terrorist therapist, not a therapist for terrorists, but a therapist to help people cope with these kinds of things that are happening.
Wow. Okay. It's always great having a conversation with you, Dr. Carole Lieberman. And I'm 100 years old. I'm still learning from people like you. Okay.
Thank you
for being on Streetwise. This is Lou Telano. Again, thanks for listening and watching Streetwise. It's Lou Telano, and I'll catch you later.